Today I'm going to be watching this video. It's called How Sweden Balances High Taxes and Growth. So yeah, I think that's one thing that a lot of other countries, when they look at Scandinavian countries, Nordic countries, they see that they pay high taxes, and some people just don't see the long-term picture of paying those high taxes to get all the public services, the healthcare, the education, get all of those good things and get them to a high quality as well. But interested to see this year, see what people think about it from Sweden. Tell me what you think, and yeah, let's learn a little bit more.
Let's talk about taxes. They're a big political issue, especially now. New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has proposed a 70% marginal tax rate on wealthy Americans as part of her Green New Deal.
Today is the day that we truly embark on a comprehensive agenda of economic, social, and racial justice in the United States of America.
It sounds like a big number, but there's another country where some workers are paying similar taxes. Sweden. This Nordic country is often known for its picturesque landscape, ice hockey prowess, and companies like IKEA and Volvo. But Sweden is also known to have some of the highest taxes in the world, and without costing its economy. So how did a country with fewer than 10 million people pull it off?
Yeah, I think that is what I was kind of alluding to at the start. I never knew this is exactly what this was about, but it is mostly like Americans who will say, and a lot of British people honestly as well, will say they just don't want to pay high tax, they don't want the government taking more of their salary and so on, but it's very short-term thinking. They don't think about the wider context and the wider benefits to society. You see how good the quality of life is in countries like Sweden. There's like a clear correlation, paying a high tax, as long as I guess you've got a good government, that it leads to a better quality of life. Yeah, let's watch. See how they compare.
This is Torben Andersen. He's a professor with the Department of Economics and Business Economics at Aarhus University in Denmark.
The short version of the story is that Sweden and the other Nordic countries, they have high taxes and they have a fairly good economic performance. The simple explanation is that you cannot judge the effect of taxes without knowing what they are financing. And in the Nordic countries, a large part of taxes goes to finance, education, health, and other things which in various ways actually support the labor supply and high employment rates.
In other words, Sweden has been able to support both high taxes and high economic growth because of how it spends those taxes. Tax revenue supports generous childcare programs, gives employees vast leave of absence opportunities, and helps offer basically free higher education. Those programs in turn help make Swedish citizens more employable. They also don't have to ration big portions of their paychecks to things like daycare or student loans. That makes them better consumers.
Yeah, so with that again, like looking at those things like the higher leave, parental leave, lower cost for childcare and so on, but at the moment I'm not too sure what is the birth rate like in Sweden. I know like in a lot of countries it's declining quite shockingly in a lot of countries as well. Is that the case in Sweden? Is it still a relatively safe amount in Sweden, people still having babies because of all these benefits? It's definitely one thing you see in the US, like a lot less people having kids because they don't get any of these benefits, unfortunately.
The average tax wedge for a Swedish worker with an average income is about 43%, but the income tax can go as high as 61.85%, depending on how high the income is. And the corporate tax rate lies at 21.4%. What's a tax wedge, you might ask? It's the difference between what a worker pays in total taxes and what it costs to employ them. Basically, the difference between your take-home pay and your total pre-tax paycheck. It's also a measure of how taxes can drag down employment.
Yes, in a way, also it kind of makes sense. The more you earn, the more you pay. That kind of just is fair, really, isn't it?
Sweden has had pretty steady GDP numbers since its recession in 2012 and during the 2008 crisis. And even before that, Sweden suffered a severe recession back in the 1990s, and prudent reforms to its banking system and regulations helped it bounce back in a big way through the next few decades. Sweden now has the 12th highest GDP per capita in the world. In fact, other high-tax Scandinavian countries like Norway and Denmark also ranked in the top 10 countries when it comes to GDP per capita.
The Swedish tax system has, of course, income taxes, but also has a high level of social contributions. At the end of the day, it's not so important whether taxes are collected in one way or another. There's still a wedge in the labor market, creating a difference between the cost of labor to the employer and the take-home wage after taxes and all social contributions to the workers.
So, for example, a single worker making roughly 726,000 Swedish krona a year in salary, or about 78,000 in US dollars, would have a marginal tax wedge of 69.7%. That percentage is nearly what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is suggesting, but she's saying that this tax rate would apply to those making over $10 million a year. Where do these tax dollars go in Sweden? They pay for things like childcare, healthcare, and education.
But if you look at an average family, yes, they pay taxes. But then on the other hand, they don't have any expenditures on education for the kids and so on. So they give out a lot of money with one hand, but they also get appreciated services back on the other. Of course, nothing is perfect, but still they get value for money. And you can also see that politically there's very broad support for maintaining this system.
But it's up to Swedish politicians to decide how to spend tax revenue. This is Johan Norberg. He's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute.
We've got more revenue from the people, so the politicians can put it to work where they find it most of interest to people or to themselves. You pay when you work, and it's distributed to yourself when you have children or when later on when you need more healthcare or something like that. So it's more a redistribution within the life cycle of people, more than a redistribution between different groups of people, from the rich to the poor. And so it means more public services, but it also means that we pay for it ourselves.
So,
yeah, I did like to say a little bit about just having children, about the benefits that the sort of system can have. But with regards to, like, I think people mostly think about education and healthcare as the two main areas where you're paying your taxes goes to. But how do you feel about the level of the quality of those in Sweden, like the level of education, the level of healthcare? Are they both worth what you pay for them, in your opinion?
Pay for it ourselves.
So what's the big deal against high taxes? In Sweden, they get you top-rated healthcare and higher education that doesn't put people in six-figure debt. In the US, advocates for lower income taxes say they stifle economic growth and consumer spending.
So therefore we have this paradox with Sweden and the other Nordic countries that tax wages are relatively high, but at the same time employment rates are high. So it's hard to say that taxes or tax wages in themselves are causing huge negative effects on employment. That's simply not the case.
In fact, Sweden has one of the highest employment rates, with over 77% of working-age citizens employed as of the third quarter of 2018. To compare, the same rate clocks in at 71% in the United States. A 2012 study showed that countries with higher taxes can stifle entrepreneurial success. But that hasn't been the case in Sweden. Some tax dollars go into a leave of absence program that allows a worker to take unpaid time off while retaining job security and status. In 1998, Sweden started the Right to Leave to Conduct a Business Operation Act. It gives employees the right to take a leave of absence of up to 6 months to start their own company. That is, if the company won't be a competitor to their current employer.
Yeah, tell me if you've taken advantage of that. How easy is it to make use of that? Tell me success stories, anything that never went so well. Love to hear more about that. I've not really heard of that sort of policy or program in any other country.
Now Stockholm has its own Silicon Valley. Several startups born there have been valued at more than $1 billion, like Spotify, Candy Crush, Minecraft, and Skype, the last two of which were bought by Microsoft. In Sweden, there are 20 startups for every 1,000 employees, versus 5 for every 1,000 in the US. And for some of those entrepreneurs who may have come into wealth along the way, there's an absence of other taxes they would maybe have to pay if they lived elsewhere.
Sweden is actually quite friendly to large owners of capital. We don't have taxes on property, no tax on wealth, no tax on gifts or inheritance. but instead it's
Inheritance tax.
it comes from income taxes, but also from consumption taxes. And that's a major difference between Sweden and the United States. We have almost as much in value-added taxes on consumption and excise taxes on different goods as we get in income taxes.
Somewhere between high employment rates, high taxes, and support to those with the entrepreneurial spirit, Sweden's economy has stayed strong. Sweden, though, isn't immune to the ongoing global growth slowdown. In fact, the Swedish krona has been the worst performing major currency in 2019.
I think the outlook, as for many other countries, is that growth will become somewhat lower. And of course, there are many uncertainties, also things happening outside Sweden or the Nordic countries which affect Sweden. But they are sort of pretty okay compared to other countries.
Yeah, tell me what you think about that. I think like it quoted some of the dates there look like 2019, so I don't know if this is when this video was created, something like that. But if it is, then tell me how things have changed since then, or how things have changed, even if this is a newer video, how things have changed over the last couple of years. Is it a better situation? Is it worse? Has anything changed since then? Yeah, definitely it was quite insightful. Found out a few things I never knew about, like that open the business fund, or the ability to take time off to open a business or start a business. Quite cool. Never knew there was so many startups in Sweden as well. A lot of good successful ones there as well. Minecraft, my son started playing that, so I know a bit about that now. But pretty cool. Tell me what life is like in Sweden at the moment. Thanks.